Ed Koehler, are you in the house?
Yes, I am, Mike. How you doing?
Excellent, thank you. Good to
Thank
see
you.
you. Why don't we just go straight over to you and your program on Silverton and stuff.
Okay, Ron just showed us a bit of the Durango and Silverton, and earlier the Denver and Rio Grande Western. And some of you were here a couple of months ago when I did the presentation on the short lines outside of Silverton and the Compass and Toltec. This is another section of my Denver and Rio Grande Western called A Visit to the Durango and Silverton Narrow Gauge Railroad. God, I paid a guy a lot of money for that. In case you ever wanted to find it on the map, here's a map of the narrow gauge area of the Denver and Rio Grande Western, approximately 1943. And here's Durango, and this is the branch up to Silverton. Okay, a little history. The San Juan extension, which was completed to Durango on July 27th, 1881. The San Juan extension began in Alamosa. Construction towards Silverton continued. Rockwood was reached before the end of 1881. The branch line to Silverton was completed during July 1882. Durango-Silverton has always been a branch line. Service was provided by a daily mixed train out of Durango. Later, it became tri-weekly. Connecting narrow gauge trackage between Durango and Antonito. This is funny. This didn't update like I had wanted it to. Was abandoned by the Durango and Western as of December 5th, 1968. The Silverton branch was sold to a new owner, the Durango and Silverton Narrow Gauge Railroad, as of May 23rd, 1981. Skipping around because things got a little out of order here. On June 18th, 1950, the Denver and Rio Grande Western unveiled its painted train. This was a train of narrow gauge passenger cars and a locomotive painted yellow with black trim for Silverton service. And again, the Silverton branch. At one end of the street in Durango, a train station beckons. The usual time for the trip to Silverton left Durango at 8 a.m. K36-480 has the first train of the day and is awaiting departure time. Let's look around. The rebuilt roundhouse is the operating center. The coaling and sand tower are now gone. K28-473 slumbers inside the Durango roundhouse. Unfortunately, the little 470s are a victim of their own success. They're no longer powerful enough to haul the regular sized trains to Silverton. The Durango and Silverton dispatcher works out of the old Denver and Rio Grande Western Yardmaster's office. The Durango and Silverton has reconstructed the Denver and Rio Grande Western Durango Freight House. It's used to support on-train catering activities. The Silverton equipment. Now, we're only going to use this discussion to cars built by the Durango and Silverton. Our 213 is a car designed to accommodate handicapped travelers. The baggage section is actually a wheelchair lift in it. Former Rio Grande Southern 257 was restored as of 1986. Durango Silverton has added a few cars to the fleet. 314, the Night Sky on roller bearing trucks, is the latest and is the only car currently in Colorado that rides on roller bearing trucks, although we'll probably see more roller bearings in the future. Cars 630 to 632 were built by the Durango and Southern in 1984. They were upgraded during 2009. Denver and Silverton narrow gauge boxcar 3631 is one of the cars that is in regular service. The trains to Silverton are still considered mixed, and at least one and sometimes two of them on a daily of the three on a daily basis has a boxcar in their consist. This is a former Phillips 66 tank car, a standard gauge tank car. Phillips 66 had these at in their gas stations and used them for storing fuel oil at a lot of their gas stations. This was one of two that were eventually purchased by the Durango and Silverton, put on narrow gauge trucks, and are now used to hold 6,500 gallons of firefighting water. And the 9327 is a former East Broad top hopper in work service. There's 3 of these on the Durango and Silverton. And Denver and Rio Grande Western flat car has been rebuilt with a ramp at one end for work equipment. Here's number 1, the hot shot, moving a train across College Street in Durango. Number 7, Big Al at Rockwood with the fire train. And diesel locomotive 11 named PB was built by the U.S. Steel Corporation using a lot of parts from the purchase from General Electric. But take a look at those trucks. Did you ever see something so massive and heavy? Why don't we take a ride? And I'm going to keep quiet because you want to see trains.
Summer back in 1881. She was a beautiful daughter of the DNRG, and she weighed about 1,000 tons. Well, it's a 45 mile through the Animas Canyon, so they set her on the narrow gauge. She drank a whole lot of water and she ate a lot of coal, and they called her the Silverton.
Silverton train, here comes the Silverton up from Durango. Here comes the Silverton, a shovel and a comb. Here comes the Silverton up from the canyon. See the smoke and hear the whistle blow.
Well, now listen to the whistle in the rockwood cut on the high line of Silverton town. And you're gonna get a shiver when you check out the river, which is 400 feet straight down. Take on some water at the Needleton tank and then struggle up a 2-5 grade. And by the time you get your hide past the snow shed slide, you head right on the Silverton.
Silverton train, here comes the Silverton up from Durango. Here comes the Silverton, a shovel and a comb. Here comes the Silverton up from the canyon. See the smoke and hear the whistle blow.
Ticket on the train to yesterday, and it's gonna leave on time. Well, it's a 45 mile through the Animas Canyon, so they set her on the narrow gauge. She drank a whole lot of water and she ate a lot of coal, and they call her the Silverton.
Silverton train, here comes the Silverton up from Durango. Here comes the Silverton, a shovel and a comb. Here comes the Silverton up from the canyon. See the smoke and hear the whistle blow. Here comes the Silverton up from Durango. Shovel and a comb. Here comes the Silverton up from the canyon. See the smoke and hear the whistle blow. Here comes the Silverton up from Durango. Here comes the Silverton, a shovel and a comb. Here comes the Silverton up from the canyon. See the smoke.
Other passengers on half-day trips board motor coaches once the train arrives in Silverton. And here's a southwest view of Silverton. Here's the Silverton Northern Engine House, the long gone Denver and Rio Grande Western Roundhouse. This is the Denver Rio Grande Western Station. And the northeast, this is was the San Juan County Courthouse at this time. It was later and still is the Museum for the San Juan County Historical Society. And it has a number of exhibits from the mining and railroad age. And this is 11th Street right here, which now has a train going up it. Here's the Silverton Northern Engine House, a closer view of it. And one of the K-37s, which are a little too heavy to use on the Durango and Silverton, but with the boiler empty, they brought one up to Silverton for display. And the shops of one of the mines built their own rail car called the Casey Jones, which operated over the Silverton Northern. And the least known remnant of narrow gauge remnant in Silverton is Otto Mears' former residence. Of course, at the time he built there, only this front half was there. And there was a little bit of a porch and a bay window here, few small changes. It was in his family into the 1950s, I believe. And K-36-480 is awaiting departure time in Silverton. And here it is coming into Rockwood, coming out of the cut. And Diesel 11 is switching our train in the Durango yard. And meanwhile, the 486 goes into the roundhouse for servicing. The musical selection is entitled The Silverton and was performed by C.W. McCall from his 1975 album, Black Bear Road. And thank you for your attention. I'm going to stop my sharing, bring up the pictures of everyone. And if there are any questions, have at it. But again, I've got something that's got a little bit of a current event, a 4-minute thing that after everyone's over, we'll, if we have time and Mike is allowing, I hate to try to sell it, but I'm not really selling it. So any questions?
Round of applause then for Ed.
Very nice, Ed. Very nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you.
Good deal.
And I didn't
Very nice.
duplicate you too much.
Oh, you made. I'm gonna have to step up my act a little better. You played music, and I'm gonna have to work on that one.
I never did till somebody else handed me a CD and said, "Listen to this."
Excellent. He's the guy who brought you the wonderful song Convoy
Yes.
from the late 70s. C.W. McCall.